Microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to officially welcome you to the press briefing to announce our partnership as the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture with the National Philharmonic Orchestra, the Mzansi NPO. So I'd like to officially welcome all of you who are here today, starting with the Director General of the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, Mr. Vusumuzi Mkhize. A round of applause for the DG, ladies and gentlemen. I would also like to acknowledge our Chief of Staff, who seems to be very surprised that he is acknowledged in these salutations. But a round of applause for Mr. J.P. Lowe, the Chief of Staff in the Office of the Minister, please. Thank you very much. I'd also like to acknowledge in her absentia, she was here earlier today, but had to attend to a very urgent matter in the department, the DDG, Dr. Cynthia Khumalo, in her absentia. A round of applause for her. Thank you very much. I'd like to acknowledge Professor Mutlenkondo, who is here with us today as one of what I would call our VVVIPs. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for him. Thank you. And of course, I would like to acknowledge the man of the moment, over and above everyone that I have announced today, who has done a phenomenal job at ensuring that we bring this moment to fore, a man who is managing this particular project. And I would like to, ladies and gentlemen, particularly acknowledge Mr. Bongani Tembe, who is amongst us. Thank you very much. I'd love to mention every single one of you by name, but I'd love to acknowledge the media who are here, as well as every single one of our South African citizens who are joining us online, and every one of our colleagues who are joining us from the department, as well as the government in general, and overall the public of South Africa. Welcome. My name is Masachaba Khumalo. I am the spokesperson to the Minister of Sport, Arts and Culture, as well as a citizen of South Africa who is deeply honored to be presiding over the press briefing that is happening here today. So, ladies and gentlemen, just to really bring us up to speed, I am deeply honored by all of you who've made the time to be here, especially because this is a dawn of a new era. I know this is a very cliched statement because it has been overused, and it is literally one of those type of terminologies that we are all well too familiar with. I can't think of a better term as a child of the revolution who was born in 1983. I'm 38 years old, and in my time, in the time of my life, of my existence, this is the first time that I have ever personally experienced history in the making, in the form of a National Philharmonic Orchestra that represents people like me. We can't shy away from that conversation. It's a very important conversation that we need to have. We're not going to shy away from the fact that leading up to this press conference, there have been very controversial perspectives presented by the media based on false information, based on lack of information, based on, quite frankly, the impatience of the media to just wait for the launch to happen so that you can have the answers to the questions that you are asking. But because you want to be first, you would rather put out information that is incorrect, that is biased. I'm not going to get into the details of the context of the existence of the Mzansi NPO, the Mzansi National Philharmonic Orchestra. But it is important for me to put it out that it is not fair that for the first time in history, we have something that is finally not just about sport, arts, and culture. It is about the development of South Africans in general. It is about putting South Africa on the map. It is about changing the status quo. It is about changing the narrative. It is about ensuring that we transform this sector. And transformation has never been comfortable. But I'm not here to speak, I'm only here to facilitate, ladies and gentlemen. So such a national orchestra, much like a national sports team, cannot exist in isolation. In order to be sustainable, the Mzansi NPO needs to be central to a national talent recruiting and refining and retaining system of the highest level of a multi-tier development process for young South Africans, of which the regional orchestras remain a critical element. And speaking on behalf of the Mzansi NPO Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome Professor Muqenkondo. A round of applause for him. Thank you.
For making your presence here. And also want to thank the media for continuing to do the work that should be done, and that's communicating what government does with the public. I think that is something that we appreciate as a board, and we want to commend the media for that. Honorable DG, I'm here on behalf of Justice Teron, who's the chairperson of the board, who can't be with us because she's committed, I think, overseas. And Ms. Wendy Luhade, also another member of the board, could not be here. But I'm happy, confident that I can say to you that after you appointed us, we sat down to develop a strategy in terms of which we want to do our work. And if you read carefully that strategy, which I adopted some 4 or 5 months ago, you will notice the following things. The first thing is that, like any national plan or any national strategy, it is framed within the discipline of the Bill of Rights. It is also framed within the discipline of the white paper, the revised white paper on arts, culture, and heritage. Beyond that, as so many have said, it is very sensitive to the imperatives that are developed in the NDP, as well as in the integrated sustainable development strategy. We also remember, as we did when we revised the white paper on arts and culture, that the normative order in which we are to do our work, should be in line with the Bantu Pile principles, which were adopted in 1998. So conceptually, that is the normative discipline within which the board is operating. That's why, if you read very carefully the strategy, you will find out that the first thing that preoccupies us, beyond just the aesthetics of orchestra, beyond just the sense of harmony and symmetry and balance and proportion you find in orchestra, and given its history from ancient Greece, what preoccupies us is how to use those virtues, how to use those principles in such a way that orchestra in this country assists us in dealing with poverty. How can we use orchestra to substantially reduce if not eliminate poverty? How can we use orchestra, a Greek form originally, but in South Africa, how can we use it to substantially reduce, if not eliminate, unemployment? How can we use this Greek classical form to eradicate all forms of injustice? And can't we use it, Mr. DG, to reduce gender-based violence, which is endemic? A way of saying in brief that the board is preoccupied with finding out how it can use this originally Greek art form in such a way that we domesticate it and make it do our bidding in this country. That's a tall order. Those of us who are preoccupied with what they call the decolonization of what? There's a lot of talk about decolonization, but we are decolonizing orchestra in a practical way. We are not involved in conventional aesthetics, beauty for its own sake. We are involved in the practical effects of orchestra in Soweto and everywhere. That is the pragmatic thrust of the board, and it is very much in line with national policy. Where do we get the confidence from? Where fortunately, our project manager, we call him our executive director, who has extensive internet experience on how to do orchestra and how to work with other orchestras worldwide and how to work with both musicians and musicologists to make sure that the symphony does the work for this country. So it is that spirit. Now, where does that come from? It comes from the realization that orchestra, like all forms of music, that orchestra, like all forms of arts, that orchestra, Mr. DG, is translatable. It is translatable into local African music forms. Now we know that in KZN, there is orchestra couched in isiZulu. And that to us is a very optimistic sign that European forms, oppressive in the past, used for elitist interests, can be so localized, so situated that it can do the work for the poor and the unemployed and the violated. That is the pragmatic approach of the board. We are aware, and of course, our confidence comes from the fact also, DG, that this thing you call orchestra is a form of language, is a form of communicating certain things you can't communicate in ordinary prose. But fortunately, we learn from language that language is translatable. isiZulu can be translated into English. So Greek can be translated into Venda or Tsonga. So it is the translatability of orchestra that gives us so much confidence. So just now, you can talk about this with Mr. Our CEO. How we are finding on the ground that orchestra can take African forms. It can even take African sound systems. A few months ago, we had a concert, Mr. MG, at Wits. The last piece of the orchestra was an admixture of classical, Zulu, African, what have you, a mix that only South Africa can achieve. Because we are sensitive to the our confidence that wherever orchestra comes from, wherever English comes from, wherever French comes, we have the self-confidence and the vital power to submit all those things to our own use. We are no longer enslaved to European forms. We are no longer puppets to Greece, but Greece is us with us here. The West has been with us for 4 centuries, and the East has been with us for 3 centuries. We are saying, given where we are in modern history, and given how we come to be where we are here, we have, as South Africans, the capability to make use of everything that modern history has given us. There is a self-confidence in a DG that carries us aboard, that carried us to when you asked us to revise the white paper, and we are happy. Beyond that, we know that if you want to change society, there's a talk in this country, of the need for fundamental change. Some talk of radical economic transformation. Fine. But where do we begin? With whom do we begin? And where? We have agreed that if you want to bring about foundational or fundamental change, you must start with children. You must start with child development. Whatever you do, you must make sure that orchestra reaches our kids on the laps of their parents. So we have a program where that orchestra is part of the institutions that we are going to use to make sure that we educate our kids for a more global, for a much more cosmopolitan consciousness. We are also aware that given the history of apartheid, South Africans are finding it difficult to deal with this thing we call difference. Oh, you are Xhosa. Oh, you are Tswana. Oh, you are Khoisan. Well, now you are this, you are this. We are aware that this is the legacy of the past. That what is different is regarded as oppositional, is regarded as foundational. Nobody's born black or white. We have constructed these meanings. You don't find white in the forest there. You don't find it. You don't find contradictions out there. We made the contradictions as human beings. And because we made them, we can reconstruct them. That is the power and the optimism that the board carries. And we are happy that there is a growing acceptance, growing appreciation that the arts have a strategic value. In the NDP, we are sorry to say, Mr. President, the NDP does not give enough attention to the arts. The chapter on the arts in the NDP is too weak and too flimsy. And that's why the arts are underfunded, because we still have to demonstrate to the private sector that the arts are good for the economy. The arts, you only have tourism here without the arts. Tourism is better funded than the arts, but tourism is a function of the arts. So we are saying that we are grounding our strategy within the developmental challenges and the constraints, the possibilities of our policy imperatives. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Ntate Moshe Nkondo, board member of the Mzansi NPO. I'd also like to acknowledge in our presence the chairperson of the National Arts Council, if you may kindly stand up so that we can give you a round of applause. Madam, thank you. Thank you so much for honoring us with your presence. We much appreciate it. So before we continue, I would like to call upon, of course, the visionary. Many will call him a visionary, a genius, a musical genius. I'm sure there are many different other, if I can just call upon many different people to give their pronouns of him, I would have different names coming up. But because this is a 1 hour session, it's not a half day, full day session. We'll just get straight to the point. I'd like to, ladies and gentlemen, call upon the the man who's overseeing this incredible historical project. His name is Bongani Tembe, speaking on behalf of the management of the Mzansi NPO. A round of applause for Bongani Tembe, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it on or off? Yes, you can. Yeah. Okay. Director General, Mr. Vusu Muzimkize, Professor Mux Nkondo, board member from Mzansi National Philharmonic Orchestra, the chair of the NAC, Princess Celentle Dlamini, and distinguished guests and the media and everyone who's here. And I must also acknowledge the legendary Madala Gunene was playing for us. Professor Nkondo spoke about translability. It sounds like a huge fancy term. I'll break it down to what it really means. And Madala here represents something like that. We are humbled by this moment. And in addition to what the Prof said, a major thrust or objective of Mzansi National Philharmonic Orchestra is to utilize music to bring people together of all races and ages, thus contributing to nation building and social cohesion. I'm sure all of us in this room will agree that music, more so like sport, has the power to bring people together. So it's really a it's one of the reasons I got involved in this project. And the other one is to ensure that we participate and add value to the vibrancy of the diverse South African landscape. So the question is, how are we going to do that? We are going to do that by providing enrichment and an engagement and community engagement programs, promoting the development of orchestral music and other genres of music, particularly indigenous music. I will come back to that point. Finding, mentoring, training, and supporting young and talented musicians, and helping to create a clear career path for them, which would lead to gainful employment, promoting the teaching, knowledge, and appreciation of music, helping to integrate music in the learning experience of our learners at school. It's something that is very important. Encouraging composers of music and promoting music which reflects South Africa's heritage, supporting the national brand around the world by presenting events which increase the global profile of South Africa and its talent, locally and internationally. And lastly, contributing to tourism, as the Prof was saying, and the growth of the creative economy. So that is what we are all about, ladies and gentlemen. And there are programs that we have devised and are in the process of devising to talk to each of these points that I've highlighted. I mean, Prof spoke about the translatability of music The orchestra I was referring to that did that performance at Vets, by the way, is the JPO, not Mzansi National Philharmonic, just to make that clear. But Mzansi's got a performance at the Albertina Sisulu Center for the physically challenged children. On Friday, the 28th of March, a performance conducted by Kutlwano Masote. Whoever is there, you'll see that we start to bring in genres and songs that reflect South Africa's heritage. We've worked with arrangers and others to come up with that repertoire. At the same time, we are not apologetic about performing what you'd call, or what is sometimes called, Western, composers by Western composers. One of our major trusts is going to be a tour in December of Beethoven Ninth, which is a major symphony by Beethoven. To me, music is not about white people or black people, young and old. It is a natural phenomenon. And all over the world, people react and feel music. So when we do that symphony, it will contribute a lot in bringing people together. Ironically, the symphony by Beethoven, which was his last symphony, he composed it when he was partially deaf. And the symphony speaks about brotherhood, about the concept of people, all persuasions coming together for the good of the community. Maybe you all know the tune. Bam 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 bam. You don't pay me to sing, Prof. So, so I will just stop there. But you know this symphony will utilize, which is loved in South Africa and loved all over the world by all people. Also, when the Berlin Wall came down, this is the symphony that was chosen. So that is really the major first national tour of Mzansi. It's actually in December with Beethoven Ninth, which will travel many parts of South Africa. More importantly, you'll have the orchestra working with choirs in each region and choirs that are coming from that region. And so when we're in Bloemfontein, can I have some water? We'll work with the choirs there. In Gauteng, etc., etc. In Cape Town, the same thing. And we've seen what can be done with an orchestra. We've had performances with Thandiswama's wife, for instance, doing her music. We've had performances with Mahotela Queens. We've had performances with the Ladysmith Black Mambazo. The list goes on. And we are working now with Hot Sticks Mabuse on doing some of his songs. So I'm going to that point of the translatability. So other people just think an orchestra only plays Mozart. No, it is a flexible thing that can be adjusted to different forms. I remember when I was starting out in opera in the 1980s, people were saying, why is a black person pursuing opera? Opera is a Western art form, and saying all of these things. I said then, in the early 80s, and the concept, the fundamental concept of opera is not Western. And you'll see when I finish how it applies to this endeavor. I said, what is opera? You choose a story, you ask a composer to compose music for it, You hire an orchestra and singers and a director, and the result is an opera. So Verdi, for example, chose Othello, Shakespeare's Othello, and took Shakespeare's Othello, composed music to come up with Othello, which is an amazing opera. And Mozart chose the story of the Magic Flute, another very popular opera. And by the way, Prince Tamino there, a role that I've performed many times, is an African prince in the story of Mozart, and which was composed hundreds of years back. I said then, almost 40 years ago, one day someone will compose an opera about Mandela. It stops nobody from doing that. And about any story, or about Johannesburg, or about Cape Town, or about the jazz players of Cape Town, or any story. I am so glad that during my lifetime, I've seen that happen. There was a time when we did operas. I remember Angelo Cobato, the legendary opera director from Cape Town, who was the head of the Cape Town Music School and Cape Opera for some 30 years. He came to Durban, and in around 1985, what is that, 45 years ago? I don't know how long that is. The mathematicians can talk to. That's the first opera I participated in with Linda, my wife. And the cast was an orchestra and a big choir and singers of maybe 120 people. And it was just the 2 or 3 of us who were black then. And today, if you stage any opera in South Africa, the choir or chorus is at least 70% black, and that's wonderful. The cast, we've had our opera singers. I think I can project. We've had our opera singers go all over the world, both black and white, shine our flag abroad and branding our country and promoting excellence. And I was saying earlier, in my own lifetime, we've done an opera about Mandela, and in collaboration with Cape Town Opera, which we did here in Johannesburg at Monte Cassino, and we've done an opera about Winnie composed by Bongani Ndodana at the State Theatre, and Winnie Mandela was sitting next to me. And I was afraid that because I knew that some of the parts are not flattering, she took it in good spirit and was jovial. So I'm going to that point that the prof was saying, that the orchestra or the arts are translatable. We can use it to bring people together. We can use it to collaborate with different genres. So we mustn't focus on these labels and all of these things. And let's take this art form and utilize it to bring people together, to train our young people, and to further the good of society. And I will stop there for now. And I want to thank the DG and the department and for supporting orchestral music in South Africa. The support to the Mzansi is not new, ladies and gentlemen. Over the past 15 years, and I can make the information available to reporters or anyone, the department has put more than R500 million into orchestral music in South Africa directly. And that is a fact, not an opinion. I also want to say that part of Mzansi Philharmonic as mandate is to help contribute to the budgets of regional orchestras. we're going to be working closely with regional orchestras. Just 2 years ago, I was in Bloemfontein, met the chair of the board and the management there, and explained this, and we started talking, and everyone is excited once they've got the right knowledge of how positive this project is, and it is rooted in working with regional orchestras. Otherwise, it would not make sense. That is the reason I'm here, I'm involved. After all, I run 2 of the major 3 regional orchestras in South Africa. I couldn't do something that is going to trip what we do. So there is no idea of killing regional orchestras, and some of the things that I hear is the opposite. You can't have Bafana Bafana, the national team, without Kaizer Chiefs, without Pirates, and I have to mention, because I'm from KZN, without AmaZulu football club, right? And we, by the way, without the Stellenbosch FC as well. So it wouldn't make sense, right? Similarly, you can't have the Springboks without the Sharks, without the Bulls, etc., etc. You can't have Mzansi National Philharmonic without the Cape Philharmonic, KZN Philharmonic, Johannesburg Philharmonic, Free State Symphony Orchestra, and all the other musicians that are existing. So it is a folly to suggest that this endeavor is here to kill regional orchestra. It's actually the opposite. I must also add that, and lastly, as I conclude, I've had 1 or 2 people saying, well, this Mzansi is a duplication. No. How is it a duplication? If you are sitting in a certain city and you're saying, oh, we're already doing development here, so Mzansi is a duplication. Well, you are sitting in Durban. The KZN Philharmonic is renowned for its education and community engagement program. But Mzansi is not duplicating the work of the KZN Philharmonic, because the KZN Philharmonic is not developing in Mpumalanga and Limpopo and elsewhere. In other words, it does not have a national footprint. So this orchestra, what is it going to correct? Is to ensure that it also assists with orchestral participation across all the provinces of the of South Africa. So if you're doing good work somewhere, don't say it's duplication. You're doing work in that city or in that village, and we applaud you for it. But everybody else must also share and enjoy in these benefits of orchestral music. I will end there. Thank you very much, Program Director, and let me end there. Thanks, Mas.
Thank you very much. Another round of applause for Mr. Bongani Dembele. And, you know, for me, what stood out the most is how the Mzansi National Philharmonic Orchestra is really about creating a legacy. This is a legacy project. It's a legacy project. It's a project to ensure that we do not leave the space the way that we found it. It's to ensure that there is transformation in the sector. It's to ensure that development reaches even that child in the ruralist areas who had no idea that they could thrive in this particular sector. Or in this is a niche sector when we speak about the orchestral space. So it's no wonder that there would be war where there's transformation. No transformation has come easy, and no war has happened without discomfort. But we're fighting a good fight. Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, I'd like to welcome onto the platform, on behalf of the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, the Director General, DG Vusumuzi Mkhize. Thank you very much.
Hey, Now, Program Director, Ms. Chaba, the Chairperson of National Arts Council, Ms. Lamini, the Chief of Staff, who is here, Professor Kondo, the member of the board, the team that is working on the transformation and the transition towards a fully established MNPO. Thank you very much for being here together with Mr. Tembe, who has been given a responsibility to project lead this momentous task that we have assigned to ourselves. But not all, let me recognize Ms. Solomons. It's good to see you here. And you're already dealing with a very fundamental issue of a community orchestra as a concept in itself. And you are putting it into practice. To the members of the media who are here with us today, we also thank you for making time. As a department, our commitment is to ensure that our programs are known and communicated and understood, so that there is nothing that is kept out of sight from our citizens, for they need to understand how the money of the taxpayer is being spent. And we appreciate then the presence of the media for being here. I think a lot has been said, so I will not waste much time. Today, we must ask ourselves a question: why this has taken so long? How did we end up to really establish a Mzansi National Philharmonic Orchestra almost 20 years, 28 years into our democracy? And I think at the heart of that is the fact that transformation is not easy. It doesn't happen on its own. So I want to acknowledge, as on behalf of the department, the work that has been done by those heroes and sheroes in continuing with great resilience to support the orchestra, even when it was not fashionable to do so. I think all of us, those who grew up loving music, when you listened to two kinds of people who were singing, called soloists and the tenors, singing all these songs that we don't understand in Italian and whatever, we would all stand up and clap without understanding what is this repertoire about? What does it mean? How did they get there? So providing a foundation and creating the interest in orchestra across the society of South Africa cannot be left to chance. Now, so when Minister Mthethwa decided some time ago, even before I arrived in the department, because we might not have a proper context. When I arrived in the department towards the end of 2017, Minister had already started with this project to say we need a National Philharmonic Orchestra. He had started with the proper consultations of the key role players to say you have been funded for a very long time, but one of the greatest things that is amiss is I don't see where is transformation. I still see the same dominance of the same players who have been there. I want this particular genre or this repertoire to be enjoyed and shared by all South Africans. When they come and stand on stage, sitting on their chairs with their instruments, violins, it can't be that this is an exclusive of the few. Because every child can learn and play a violin. So he then gave me the opportunity and said, DG, we need to work on this and establish this Mzansi National Philharmonic Orchestra. I have already met and laid a foundation for you, engaging with the 3 main orchestras in the country. And that was KZN, Johannesburg, as well as Cape Town. I then had to institute a process to meet them, which culminated after the appointment of that task team, culminated in our meeting at the offices of NAC in Johannesburg downtown, where we were now discussing how can this baby be born. We met and we said, give us a concept and everything on how this can be done. And then eventually the team was appointed, and we are happy that today this journey has come to the point where these consultations have brought us to where today we are receiving this report. We'll be presenting also to the minister on the journey that has been taken. This journey includes, importantly, that the NPO that we are talking about is now officially registered. So it is an entity of its own. Secondly, is that there is a board that is working on this baby and nurturing it. And this board is having people of high integrity, respectable people. So that at the end of the day, we see to it that this Mzansi Philharmonic Orchestra is properly implemented and rolled out. Now, under the issue of then what informed this, I arrived in the department, there was still this long story about revised white paper and when is it gonna be finalized and implemented. Again, Minister said, DG, this is what you need to do. We cannot continue to say we are finalizing this revised white paper for life, because the sector is not properly catered for and is not also well recognized in the country. You need to have this revised white paper done and dusted. We embarked on that journey, and when we did that, if you look at section 4.1.1 that talks to the issue of theaters, it talks about national orchestras and that these must be established and must be subsidized by government, but that they must be available throughout the country, because the revised white paper recognized that there is a huge skewness towards 3 provinces: KZN, Gauteng, and Western Cape. So as part of the transformation agenda as envisaged in the revised white paper, when you look at that page 18, it explains why you need to have, among others, the National Orchestra, and that they must contribute to the tourism economy of each and every city. So that is why we believe that this is the right moment, as the program director was saying, to achieve this transformation. And this transformation will work at multiple levels. Of course, it will bring and continue to do so, as Mr. Tembe have said, to bring South Africans together from all hues, race, class, it doesn't matter. Social cohesion is a mandate of this department, and nation building. And if you go to any orchestra, when there is a concert, you will see that there is no more issue of black or white. It's South Africans enjoying themselves being together. So social cohesion is unfortunately something that remains very difficult because people think it's a soft issue. When the rugby team has won the box, everybody goes, we are at the stadium. But when we go back to our separate ways. And we then come back to the old identity of looking at each other on the grounds of race. But there are these moments that brings us together. And there is no other sector that does that better than sport, arts, and culture. So this transformation then also, it's about the value chain. When we talk here about instrumentation that you need, someone must make that instrument. So you can only contribute to the economy because as this Mzansi National Philharmonic Orchestra finds its ground in all provinces, you will then have a demand for these instruments. Someone must make them. The economy then must be stimulated. So it is important to understand that this transformation is not an event in itself, but it's about moving society forward as envisaged in the National Development Plan. So it will be about jobs, because artists will be able to participate as they are being selected from the different areas, but it means there must be vibrancy of regional orchestras, because we want the best when it comes to national, as a pyramid and as an ultimate, that child in that rural community, that child in that township must say, one day I will be there. I will be part of the National Philharmonic Orchestra. Right now, they don't know to what end. They are just enjoying it. But we want to create a sense of attraction to this particular repertoire. And we will achieve it. We are committed to work towards that. There is an issue of cadet system that has been indicated, and it's something that attracted us in this concept, so that we know that there will be a grower of our own wood, so that at the end of the day, we have the ultimate best and the professional. We were also attracted by the issue of indigenization of this repertoire. And I think Mr. Tembe has spoken well about that, but most, not that Mr. Tembe, you were outclassed, but I think Professor Ngondo, I think he laid a perfect foundation on this music's adaptability to our own country's character and nature of our music. So we want to achieve this. But maybe also then, if we look at the issue of funding, we remain committed to continue the funding. We think that the National Arts Council has been doing a great job. And remember, this was not done only now. This comes from very far. Orchestras in this country have been funded by this department for years. What we were missing is the ultimate. So when I engage with the regional orchestras, I even wrote to them to be part of this journey, was even indicating how we're going to deal with the change on the mechanism for funding, because it's not that there is new money. We had to look at the sliding scale process, but ensure that we don't kill the regional orchestras. And that is why then the funding still remain a component of that breakdown to support them. But at the end of the day, we want each and every child in this country to have an opportunity. Not to be told you can't do this, it's too sophisticated. Why is it that particularly the blacks must be seen incapable of participating in this because it's too sophisticated? There's nothing like that. That is why the commitment to this transformation agenda is solid from our side. And the minister has made it clear that as we receive this feedback of progress made by the board as well as a project manager here, Mr. Tembe, that we now then make sure we move forward with speed. We must now, and there is a plan to support the growing of the National Philharmonic Orchestra at a regional level to make sure that the provinces that do not have this are also provided with that support. They're going to be forced to report what are they doing in those areas. We have already started the white paper, those who might not have read it. The revised white paper on arts and culture is very clear that this apartheid structure must be fundamentally dismantled because it favors 3 provinces in the field of sport, arts and culture. Whether it is infrastructure, whether it is expertise, it doesn't matter. Whether it is resources, it is still these 3 provinces. So the white paper made a call to government to change this and make sure that there is no need for every child, if he dreams to be a Bongani Tembe, to then say, I must leave my own place, my royal place in Limpopo and go to another province. It can't be. That is why we are busy with the project now of what? Of the theaters, building theaters in the provinces that did not have them. We are funding the project for Limpopo. We are busy with the Mpumalanga for feasibility study. We have already made a huge difference in Northern Cape, and I now have a new one. We have declared in Eastern Cape a cultural precinct, a theater center. We are now saying, same thing with orchestra. It must be in all provinces. No one must aspire to go to Gauteng, Western Cape, or KZN. They must be able to say, in my province, I have an opportunity. So, our transformation of this particular repertoire remains one of our goals, and we can assure you that we are going to work with all the provinces, and the consultations are still going to go on with key role players to make sure that we continue to move in sync with one another. But let South Africa be a country where all of us celebrate and embrace orchestra with no exclusion on the basis of affordability. I was asking Mr. Solomon, how much does it cost to get that double bass guitar? He says if you are lucky, you will get it 20,000, depending whether you're an amateur. But now it means that it's for me as an amateur. But can I afford 20,000 rand? It's practically impossible. So this is why government must then fund this and make sure that it goes throughout the country. And that is the mission that Minister Mtetwa had said. The board, as well as Mr. Tembe, they must make sure that we get this particular Mzansi National Philharmonic Orchestra reverberating in all corners of South Africa. We will start small, but I'm sure we're going to achieve big things. As he has already indicated, some of the programs where we are being invited to participate, people are going to say, yo, there is South Africa comes again. It's not just box, it's not just cricket proteas, it's not just Banyana. Hey, they're going to say, oh, it's also Banyana Orchestra. Hey? It is a power we have in our hands. Let's make South Africa a happy country. And we can do that through sport, arts and culture, despite all challenges we have. The social ills our kids are facing are huge. But can you imagine if there is an orchestra where they can go to a theater and practice, a choir? How many of young people are participating there? Far from all these social ills of drugs and all those things, of going to taverns, because they have something of value that they can look forward after school to do. And that's why we are also working and making sure that we work very closely. I'm not sure if all of you are aware of the Easterford choral music, because these things keep our children out of mischief. But most importantly, they must know they can earn a living through orchestra. It is a career. So I would like to say on behalf of the department, we want to thank you, Mzansi National Philharmonic Orchestra Board, under the leadership of Jasteron, for the work that you have done to bring us here to this level. We want to thank you, Mr. Tembe, for projecting and managing this and bringing the stakeholders on board to make sure that they understand everybody has a stake in this project. And we hope that with your experience and your knowledge, that is indisputable in this field, South Africa is going to reach greater heights and compete with the best. And that when we've got our own sophisticated functions, we will have an orchestra that represents every color and creed of this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the Director General, DG Vusumuzu Mkhize. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to open up the floor to our Q&A session, where we will be giving an opportunity to the media that are here today to ask your questions. I would implore you to please introduce yourselves, give your name, the media house that you represent, and also present your question as well. Do I have any hands? Yes, ma'am. Please stand up.
Stand up.
Mm.
Hi, my name is Victoria. I'm from the Daily Maverick. I would like to start off by asking, I think, to the DG, if you could please just clarify why the total funds ring-fenced for the National Philharmonic Orchestra in the presentation before Parliament...
Wait, hold on, Victoria. I'm going to ask you to slow down, but also speak into the mic.
Sorry. I think this is directed for the DG. Please, could you clarify why the total funds ring-fenced for the National Philharmonic Orchestra in the presentation before Parliament in December 2021 says a total of about 54 million that was ring-fenced, but now the budget is in the region of 32 million 6 months later. Was that money set aside and paid out in December, or why the change?
Thank you very much, Victoria.
Next question.
Thank you. All right. Next question, please. All right, sir. Thank you. Name, surname, media house, and your question, please.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Dino. I have the podcast Classical Music Decoded, and I suppose I'm at the age now where people refer to me as sir, so that's all right.
All right, sir.
And so my question is directed, I suppose, towards Mr. Bongani Tembe, and that is, there is the view that the real work of developing musicians and an audience for orchestras is done by various community programs that are run primarily in the townships. I suppose one example, though not the only example, is the Busgate Soweto String Ensemble. So my question is, will the Mzansi NPO be funding or cooperating with these programs in any way?
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Do we have one more hand before we hand over to our panelists to respond? All right. So,
Sorry.
yes, no, sure. Yeah.
I suppose anyone involved in the orchestra can take this.
Okay.
On page 2 of the annual report that was released, it states that the orchestra is funded via public-private partnership. And of course, the public bit is the funding from the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. And it states in the report that the orchestra has secured partnerships with national and international partnerships. Who are the private organizations that have contributed to the orchestra?
Thank you. All right, let's start with Victoria's question. Sorry, just making notes. All right, so starting with Victoria's question regarding, and this is directed to the DG Vusumuzi Mkhize, regarding total funds that it had initially, according to Victoria, been indicated at 54 million. Now the question is 32 million. So is it 54? Is it 32 6 months later? What is the explanation behind that, DG? Thank you.
No, no, it's about the money as reported. That is accurate. These were the accumulative funds, because we had not all the funds to the regional orchestras or any, as we were preparing for the Philharmonic Orchestra. We had communicated to the regional orchestras about our sliding scale that we were reducing in their funding. Now, when you talk of this 30-something million vis-a-vis the 50 million, you must separate the projected budget annually and the budget that was set aside. So it's not reduced, the budget is there. What we are talking about with the 30 million that has been spoken about in media, it is about what they had to give us their breakdown of what will it cost to run the Mzansi Philharmonic Orchestra per annum. So that is what it's referring to. That the budget has not disappeared. That is why sometimes South Africans want to read between the lines instead of asking the direct question, and I'm happy that you have done so. Yes, so that money is there. The 30, I think he can just give you the detail of how the breakdown of the 30 something million rand. One of the reasons why we thought this model is better, by the way, Dino, was that if there are performances, you charge money, people participate. We want them to be self-sustainable and have a trust eventually, or an endowment. That is what we want, so that we can use money for other programs of developing this. But yeah, I don't know that it's a long-winded question, but when we transferred the money from NAC, that is a total budget. The money is intended to remain with the NAC, and then there is a budget they had to give us to know, if you are allocated this money, what are you going to use it for? And how much is it to run the Mzansi National Philharmonic Orchestra? So that is why if you read there, it says projected budget for them per annum.
Thank you very much, DG. If we can give the next microphone to Mr. Dembe. The next question was alluding to the fact that the real work is done by the community. It's done on the ground. And according to my understanding, what is the role of the Mzansi National Philharmonic Orchestra in this regard?
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dino, for that very much important question. Yes, it is true that there are many community projects on the ground that are doing very good work. So whilst, and Bus 8 is one of them, and Mr. Solomon here is doing amazing work. Is from the Philharmonic Community Orchestra. They're doing amazing work in Cape Town, Cape Flats, and all of those places with an orchestra of young people, 80 or 100. They are now working here in Gauteng as well for the community orchestra. So the Mzansi National Philharmonic Orchestra, whilst it will work very closely with regional orchestras and contribute to their funding, is also looking, as the DG said, to other provinces and other formations. So we'll be working with community groups, with different people. Remember, I've just mentioned the Free State. I'm hoping that next week we can see the Eastern Cape Philharmonic. We are talking now to the Mpumalanga Chamber Orchestra and different other community people who are rooted in their communities. The idea is therefore to work with them, work alongside them. So I hope I answered your question. Okay, thank you. And then, sorry, here.
And you may continue, because the follow-up question was pertaining to the partners of the Mzansi Philharmonic Orchestra.
Yes. We are talking to different partners and potential partners. And of course, the purpose of today is not to announce those partnerships, you know. And you can imagine a partner that you're talking to, suddenly you announce this and announce this. But they are very exciting things on both the local, national, and international situation in terms of partnerships. One, for example, that we've already said out there, but there are many others, is we are collaborating for the first time this year. The G20 of nations will have a G20 orchestra. And they said to me, we want it to be young people under 30. Don't give us Bongani anyone over 30. I said, oops, so I can't qualify. And so you're going to have an orchestra from all the G20 countries. And so we are building a partnership there. And they hope it's going to happen annually. And we are sending 6 young people of all races in South Africa to participate in that. We'll be linking with other countries, with other associations in building these partnerships. I'm just stating one because it's public and it's out there. But as time progresses, you'll hear some very, very positive news. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tembe. Unless we have any other questions, I would like to close off this media engagement session. Going once, going twice. Closed. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to thank you. A round of applause to our DG, a round of applause to our DDG in her absentia, the Chief of Staff, a round of applause to Mr. Bongani Tembe, a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, to our Professor Mushenkondo, a round of applause to the board, a round of applause to the National Philharmonic Orchestra that has just been officially launched, and a round of applause to the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture for being at the threshold and the forefront of transformation of the heritage landscape in South Africa. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.